Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining the National Bicycle Dealers Association. For this supply webinar, we are really glad to have Bob Margevicius with us here again to have a talk about supply and demand as he sees it right now. We will get to him in just a minute. My name is Rochelle Scouten. I am the Development Director here at the NBDA. We are putting on webinars like this periodically throughout the year. Feel free to go to nbda.com to see our full schedule, and if you're not a member, go ahead and join. If you do have questions throughout the presentation, please type them into the question box, and Bob has said he'll allow time at the end for questions. So we will get to those at the end, and without further ado, here we go, Bob. Thanks.
Well, good morning, good afternoon. I'm not sure where everybody is, but I want to just welcome everybody, and I want to thank the NBDA for the opportunity to contribute and just to provide everybody some insight and some guidance on what's happening in the marketplace and how things are going and how things are looking going forward. So, and I do want to make a statement that this presentation that we're looking at actually is one that's being presented just about at this time as well in China. The Chinese government has asked me to put together a presentation that talks about the American market and what's happening and where the business is going. So I've done some editing of this, and now it's pretty appropriate, and it's a good time to just talk about it and how it relates to what's happening in the market and where we're going. So, so I'm going to start out just by making some observations, right? And I'm going to share some details of these. So, you know we're in an unusual situation today with the pandemic. And from my standpoint, many of you know I've been in this business now for 40 years, believe it or not, actually 41 years. And I'm just going to make some reflections over that time that the bicycle market is really volatile. And I'm going to show you about that volatility. I'm going to also share that innovations really do increase the value, and they have over time have changed the dynamic of the marketplace. There are non-market influences that have a tendency to disrupt. And we'll look at some of those non-market influences and how they have changed and what impact that they've had on the marketplace. And today, something that I've never seen in my history and experience in the bike business is today, demand is far exceeding supply. So to jump right in, on market volatility. So I've gone through, this data is actually from the ITC, which is the International Trade Commission, and they track imports. And for the bike industry, 98% or maybe more, 99% of the market of bicycles sold in the US market are imported. And so I've identified in this chart just how volatile the market is. And this graph starts in 1991 and goes through 2019. 2020 is not so much different than 2019. We've seen a gain. And I just want to walk through a few of the interesting things as we go through and look at the individual families and models of bikes. So in the early 90s, if you take a look at this graph, the early 90s, bicycle production was happening in the United States. And we saw a transition from bikes being produced in the United States into a complete reliance on imports, somewhere in the range of around 1999 to 2000. And you'll see at that time, actual bike imports reached a level of just about 20 million bikes. And just to give you a reference point as to where things are today, for 2019, bicycle imports were around 13 million. So you can see the dramatic changes in the marketplace over this long period of time as to what's happened with the bike business and what is the volatility. So the obvious question is, well, what's happened and why is the market so volatile? So there are things that do influence what happens and what happens at retail. So we've seen and experienced, many of us have experienced a lot of things that have gone on that have affected the overall retail sales. You may recall we've had gas shortages, and those have had an impact on actual sales. We had in the early 2000s, we had Lance as a driver. We had a change in people's behavior where double income families with no kids came in, and we saw some surges in sales in the late 2009. We had some weather changes, and that weather changes really had a great impact. Again, we've seen gas, fuel, energy prices have had a pretty dramatic effect on overall sales and the results that we've experienced. And here we are today. We're experiencing a trade war that's happened with China, and we're also looking at today COVID, what it's doing and how it's impacting the marketplace. All of these situations are unexpected. They've come, they're non-market, and they've impacted the results and the experiences that we've had. And so there are things that we can't necessarily plan for. However, there are influences that we have to take into consideration and adopt to. So the other things that are happening is innovations. And what's happening with innovations? We've seen a lot of innovations over a long period of time. Many of you know I've been involved in the BMX business in the very beginning. That was a big driver. And when we saw those big spikes in the 2000s, we saw BMX coming into vogue and really making an impact on bringing kids in. We saw mountain bikes and full suspension bikes make an entry. They too were pretty significant in driving the innovations and driving the overall revenue and sales. We had the Lance factor come in. That too was a big consideration. It was something that happened over a period of time and did drive and engage some success. We started seeing innovations in materials in the late 1900s, early 2000s. We saw aluminum come into play, and later on in 2005 through going forward, we started to see carbon fiber and composite come into the market, and it too drove a lot of sales and a lot of results. We experienced titanium, and we're still experiencing titanium as a driver, as an innovation that's brought in a lot of new customers. We saw the advent of event bikes. hybrid type bikes, and they happened sometime around the mid to late 2010, 2011, 2012. And today, as everybody knows, we're starting to see gravel bikes are making their entry into the marketplace. And that too is driving sales and driving engagement by a lot of new people that we haven't really experienced before. And today, we're looking, particularly as we look at the pandemic and what's happening with the pandemic, we're seeing e-bikes be a main driver and a main innovation that's really helping to accelerate the business overall. And so, I had mentioned that demand is exceeding supply, and I put this together just to give everybody just a little snapshot of where at least I see the bike industry going. And this is, again, I've tried to map out with different color configurations, different families of bikes, types of bikes, and where they're going and what's happening with supply. So you can see that in 2018, the number of bikes that was actually imported into the US was somewhere in the range of about 17 million. And again, 2018. And again, I just want to clarify what happened with 2019. In 2019, we started to see Section 301 tariffs that came into play. Those impacted the amount of bikes that were imported into the United States. And so we saw a dip from 2018 of around 17 million bikes down to around 13 million in 2019. We're anticipating, based on the pace that we're at right now, that 2020 will have an increase from 13 million to somewhere in the area of about 15, close to 15 million. So we are going to see a gain, even though we still have Section 301 tariffs that are applying to adult bikes coming from China. The surge in sales and results have brought that number back up. So we anticipate it to be somewhere in the area of about 15. And looking out over out to 2030, we're looking to bring the demand for bikes back to the range where it was in 2000, somewhere in the area of about 20 million bikes. And we're going to see some gains in electric bikes. We're going to see gains in kids' bikes. We're going to see some incremental gains in performance type bikes, adult bikes, and mountain bikes. But overall, the spirit and the outlook looks very positive going forward as we start seeing these pandemic riders that remain in cycling. They love the activity and the sport, much like all of us do. And the expectations are that we're going to see continued growth. And I want to just point out the supply situation, because it's a challenging thing for all of us. With China basically out of the mix because of the Section 301 tariffs, it's really put a limit on what we can and can't do from a supply standpoint. So it's been challenging for all of us. And I mentioned I'm going to talk a little bit about supply. That from my side and many other people in the bike business, we've been chasing supply now for me more than 8 months already. And I'm on the phone every day today, 5 o'clock to 8 or 9 o'clock at night every day, trying to talk to suppliers, trying to accelerate production, trying to overcome obstacles. And the obstacles are quite big. Many of them are supply based, and particularly as demand exceeds supply from major components. Disc brakes are one, rear derailleurs are another. We're seeing limits on things like forged parts like cranks and traditionally products that we really never expected to see any supply issues with, like handlebars or saddles. They're in hot demand right now, and a lot of it is driven by just the capacity and the capabilities that some of these suppliers have. Many of them have geared up to the quantity of bikes that we've been importing over a long period of time. And if I go back to the supply situation and the sales situation, you'll see that volatility has resulted in the suppliers gearing up to produce a certain quantity. And as we see the quantities increase, the suppliers have really done a great job in improving the overall efficiency of their operation. They've become very flexible in the way that they're operating. They've added additional workers. Many of them are adding additional personnel and people to overview quality and the quality of the product, and to improve the shipping and the production performance. But as I said, there's a lot of limits. Just yesterday, we were struggling with things like getting containers. The demand is so high for imported products around the world, and many of the shipping companies have taken boats out of commission because of the experience they had early in the COVID crisis. That we're struggling just to get containers to import and ship products here into the United States. That's just one of many things, in addition to just labor issues and component supply issues. And a lot of people ask me, what's my outlook? I see that we're going to continue to see incremental improvements in not only the ability of some of these manufacturers and some of the component makers to supply additional product. We are going to see some incremental changes, and we're also going to see some of the major companies making some big investments to increase capacity to service the demand. And I expect that over the next 3 to 4 years, as demand continues to grow, that those suppliers will continue to invest, and that we'll see that the supply will ease up to some degree, but it's still going to take quite some time for the supply to catch up. And I was saying to Brandy and the team just yesterday, I received in the sell-in data for People for Bikes, and just some really quick numbers. This is specifically relating to the IBD market. Sales in the month of October, which we just completed, were somewhere in the area of about 200,000 into the independent retail channel. As an industry, we received in from overseas about 180,000. So there's a gap of roughly about 20,000. We have inventory today of about 58,000, and the 58,000 is one tenth of what the inventory was a year ago. We had about 590,000 bikes a year ago. So we only have 58,000 bikes in inventory, and of the 58,000 bikes in inventory, as I was mentioning, about 13,000 of them are e-bikes. So we're in a pretty critical situation where everything that's coming in is just being shipped out immediately. And the question traditionally is asked, when are we going to have products available for on-demand needs? Well, if you just go through those numbers and say, well, we have 58,000 bikes in stock and we're averaging sales of say 200,000 a month, and we're able to get in be around 200,000 a month, it's going to take us quite some time, probably 18 to 20 months before we're able to have products that are available for on demand and that we'll be able to rebuild that inventory level that we had just a year ago. So I don't want to create any unreal expectations. I don't see any big changes in that myself. I just think it's just going to be a lot of hard work and continuing to try and drive to get product and to build bikes and ship them as quickly as possible. So from there, I just want to, pause and say, okay, what can we learn from this? So what we can learn from this particular non-market situation is, and the demand and the supply is, COVID-19, it really is a spark that ignited demand for a lot of things, for kids bikes, transportation, utility, and performance bikes. I'm out here in California. I see a lot of I kind of call them COVID riders, people that haven't really been on a bike for a long time, and I see them riding all geared up with their cycling clothes, helmets, enjoying the health, the performance, and the fitness aspects of bikes. And that's a really great thing. We are really exciting a lot of customers. And yeah, what I think we and everybody else are learning, which I call it the best kept secret in the transportation and the health and fitness world, is, cycling really is an amazing way for people to be healthy, to have fitness, and for welfare. It's a wonderful thing. And today, we're seeing a much clearer focus on global warming and a clean and safe environment. That too is sparking a lot of the demand that we're seeing. And today a lot of people are looking at ways to protect themselves, and people are avoiding public transportation, and they're moving into active mobility for their daily lives. And so we are seeing a lot of people using bikes and e-bikes for transportation and for utility purposes. And I think we're going to continue to see that. And we are and will continue to be in a disruptive commercial environment. This pandemic is, we may have a vaccine. Who knows when that'll be available? But the situation is disruptive, and it's going to be disruptive for quite some time until we're able to really catch up, and that we're able to service and satisfy the needs that are generated right now. And innovation drives results. I know everybody here is pretty familiar at Specialized, where we've been actually continuing to be really aggressive on innovation. We're providing some really exciting new products, whether it's an Athos or whether it's a stump jumper. And we really believe that we don't want to rest on our laurels, and the industry doesn't want to really rest on our laurels. We want to continue to innovate. We want to continue to drive and excite people with bikes, and whether it's e-bikes or whether it's performance bikes or whether it's street bikes or city bikes, we really want to make sure that we continue to innovate and have that position where we continue to drive the results, increase the demand, and really excite the customer. And I elaborated on this, but demand is exceeding supply, and it's probably going to for quite some time. And I don't want to sugarcoat that, but we're going to experience that for quite some time. And there's not a lot of solutions that we have based on the capacity and the capabilities of the suppliers and that we're currently dealing with. And there is a confidence level that that the market growth is going to continue. We all believe that as an industry, and I think that too is driving all of us to really believe that demand is going to exceed supply and to do everything we possibly can to try and get supply and try and improve the efficiency and get suppliers to make investments in the marketplace. And one last thing I want to add to this is, as everybody probably knows, this phenomenon that we're dealing with, this increase in demand for bikes, is not limited to just the United States. We at Specialized, we're selling globally, and I can tell you, every country, every distribution point that we have is experiencing the same kind of activity and excitement and enthusiasm over cycling. So we're fighting a global demand right now, and we're trying to service it with supply that too has limitations and that we're governed by. So it's been a time where we're pressing globally to try and meet the global market needs. So where are the opportunities? And as I said, we're trying to work with the component suppliers and with the assemblers to continue to invest in infrastructure and to invest in additional capabilities to satisfy and service the needs going forward. And that's a big thing. And so from there, the industry and together, we've got to look at investing in infrastructure. And infrastructure means safety, and safety is important. So investing in infrastructure for people to use bikes for transportation, for utility, for recreation, for sport purposes, we need that infrastructure, and we need to make it safe, and we need to make it welcoming for people. And that's going to be an important dimension, particularly going forward as we do see these new riders and retaining them and maintaining them in cycling. We're gonna have to appeal to the new diverse majority of people, and I'm going to get into that because at least in my community here and in other communities that I've visited, the people who are buying bikes aren't necessarily the people that we're familiar with. We're seeing a new dimension of people that we've probably not experienced before, and they're really excited and they're engaged and they're becoming part of our cycling community. So we're going to have to embrace this diversity. There's a lot of fuel in the children's bikes markets, and I have talked to quite a few people, parents during the pandemic. They've let their kids ride bikes for a lot of reasons, keep them off of the using up Wi-Fi at the house while dad's Zooming in a meeting. So the parents have taken to the simplicity of bikes so that the kids are not playing video games and not watching videos. And so what I saw originally was a real hesitancy in a lot of parents for having kids riding bikes. Today, they're much more confident, and the kids are coming back, and the kids are coming back with a smile on their face. And I think the parents have a high degree of confidence that kids and children's bikes are a really good thing. And I think we're going to continue to see children's bikes fuel a lot of the growth that we're starting to see in the bike market. And Also, active mobility, and active mobility is what we do in the way of transportation and how we service and satisfy the needs with this infrastructure. So as I said, these are some tenets I think that we need to look at. Building infrastructure. So I did a little survey on why do people in Copenhagen, which is the highest cycling usage by far in the world, and I think somewhere in the area of 60 or 70% of all people in Copenhagen ride bikes regularly. And so why do they ride bikes? Quick, easy, and convenient. And I think we're going to move into that. Exercise, they're a cheap mode of transportation and environmentally friendly. And again, more safety, infrastructure, it really does result in more cycling. And we want to continue with that. And appealing to the new majority. If you take a look at what's happening in the demographics and where the demographics are changing, we're starting to see a lot of changes in the demographics. And as I said, where I'm living here in California, I see a lot of these people. Whether it's Hispanic or whether it's people of color, Asians, that are coming in, and I see them all the time on the roads riding bikes at a level that's quite different than it was, I would say, a year or a couple years ago. And these are good buyers. They're people who are smart. They have a lot of they have a lot of enthusiasm, and they're engaged. And I think that we too, as an industry, we've got to start embracing them. They're becoming an important part of our culture and our passion, and they are sharing that passion that we have. And as you can see from this graph, by 2050, we're going to see some pretty dramatic changes in some of the demographics. And so we're going to have to look and identify ways to appeal to those people and to service them, because they are good customers and they're paying and they're really responsive. Invest in personal mobility. As I said, where the statistic here in the United States is something like 94% of all bikes here in the United States are sold for sport, recreation, or performance use. And as we have seen from this pandemic, that a lot more people are getting into riding bikes for utility and personal mobility purposes. And we're going to have to invest, and we're going to have to embrace this as a part of our world today. And just as I had mentioned that the United States is 94%, and just as a reference point, in Europe, it's roughly about 60% of the business is focused on personal mobility. So that's bikes for transportation and utility purposes. So we've got to make that transition, particularly now. We have the opportunity. There are a lot of different people that are interested in using bikes for personal mobility, and we have to embrace that. It doesn't necessarily have the performance character that we all like and we all are passionate about, but it really serves as a purpose of personal mobility, and it brings people into the sport. And yes, the Europeans as well have found that those people who are riding it for personal mobility or for transportation, they do ride and they do use other bikes for performance or sport purposes. So embrace personal mobility and look at that transportation and utility purpose for bikes. It's a good thing. And I mentioned in youth, and we're starting to see a big amount of people that are coming in, particularly youth in the marketplace. And youth, if you take a look at the demographic, kids, we have a lot more kids that are coming into the marketplace, and the projections are that those kids, those children are really great. They're great disciples for the sport. And now, as I said, with the pandemic, it sparked a new level of confidence in parents for letting their kids ride bikes. And let's embrace that as well. And let's really bring those kids in. Let's show them what we have, and let's make them a part of our community as well. They're the ones who are going to be buying those high performance bikes, and they're the Lances of the future. So let's embrace them and let's bring them in, and let's engage as much as we can in youth. So I'm gonna close up by saying, just from my side, and then we can open up to questions. But so what do I see going on, and what do I want everybody to take away from this? First of all, just support global investments, and with the suppliers and the companies that you're dealing with, encourage them to make investments, and make those investments in building capacity, and in having the product available to allow us to grow this business, because we do need to build capacity. Continue to reach out and to encourage new riders. They're out there and they really want to be part, and they want to ride. And the COVID riders, many of the people who have bought bikes during this period, just offer them encouragement and fuel them with inspiration. They're going to be our new customers, and we want them. And we want them pretty badly to stay in and to continue to be engaged. Invest in support efforts for infrastructure and safe places to ride. I can't emphasize enough that in order for us to really continue to engage people in bike use for transportation or utility, or even for sport and performance purposes, we need to have infrastructure, and it needs to be safe, and people need to feel comfortable when they're riding and where they're riding. And together we need to engage and be proactive in promoting and building a really safe bicycle community. That's going to be an important thing as we move forward with so many new people riding bikes. We do need to promote. We need to be proactive in our communities, and we do need to create safe cycling communities where people feel confident. Be a disciple for cycling in your community. We're in an interesting time, and all of you are messengers out there. And I think that everybody needs to be a messenger. I think everybody needs to show that they too believe in cycling. They believe in it for transportation, for utility, for sport, recreation. So be a good disciple in your community, and certainly that resonates with the people in your community, and it will result in increasing your customer base, growing your sales, and increasing the average retail prices. I'm going to save enjoy the ride, but I again want to stress, this is about supply and demand. So I do want to stress that we are in a situation where demand is far exceeding supply. And I had mentioned to people that right now, from the Specialized side, we're placing orders today almost 18 months in advance. We're placing firm orders for bikes 18 months in advance today. And so we're seeing and we're experiencing the fact that that demand is really high. We're seeing long lead times on key products, like I said, whether it's disc brakes or derailleurs. Some of them are up to right now 10 to 12 months lead time, 10 to 12 months lead time on some of the key components. And that situation is as I was saying, based on the inventory available and the demand. That situation is probably not going to change for quite some time. So work hard and try and plan what your needs are going to be, and place them. Be committed, and we will supply what your demands are. It may not be exactly when you need them, but as I said, we're working hand to mouth at this moment, and all of us are doing the best that we absolutely can to try and get products and get bikes available to you as soon as possible. And lastly, we are in a tough time, and I would just encourage everybody to try and balance your life. Take some time, enjoy the ride. We're in an unusual situation where the demand is so good, and sales and results are so good, but do take some time, enjoy the ride, and remember, I always say this to everybody, the journey is the destination, and just keep that in mind. So that's about it for me. I want to thank everybody for listening, and I'm open for questions or thoughts or comments that anybody may have. But anyway, it's been great, and I appreciate everybody taking the time.
Great. Thank you so much. All right, we do have questions, so I'm just going to get right into it. So the first question is, it appears that kids' bikes are expected to grow the most over the next 10 years. It seems that the rapidly evolving electric segment would have a higher growth rate as it crosses and expands into other markets. What are the constraints that you see keeping electric from growing at a higher rate?
Well, it's a good question, and the first one is, of course, the complexity of e-bikes, and we're seeing, just as a reference point, for every one traditional pedal bike we can make, every one pedal bike that we can make, let me phrase that differently, sorry. For every e-bike we make, we can make 1.6 traditional pedal bikes. So the e-bike capacity and the ability for us to assemble and produce them is slower than it is for a traditional pedal bike. So that's one restraint. And the second one is, the complexity of it, which includes the motor, and the motor system is more complicated. Lead times are longer. It's higher value. Batteries as well. The demand is extremely high globally for batteries for many different applications. And I think, just to really be straight with everybody, the European community is growing at a geometric pace for e-bikes, and a lot of it just has to do with what I was saying, that there's such a high percentage of bikes that are used for transportation and the utility. So the European market is growing quickly, and a lot of the products and e-bikes that are being produced, a lot of them are going to Europe right now. So we in the United States were far behind. Just a quick reference point, the European community sold last year this year, 2020, will sell about 5 million e-bikes. Here in the United States, we'll probably be somewhere in the area of 500 to 600,000. So we're about 1/10 the size. And so I think that that's one of the limitations. And as everybody knows, we have the 3-class system that's been approved in 28 states. We still have 22 states left to go. So there's still some resistance. I think that's number 2. And the third thing, it's not to get too political about this, but we've got a political environment right now where the government is encouraging, it's really supportive of the combustion engine vehicle business because of the jobs and because of the energy use. And with the new transition of the of a new administration. We may see a new focus on the environment and on climate change, and that could really help spur the demand, but we don't really know. But so I just to summarize, I think that there are limitations from an assembly and production standpoint. Number two, I think that the demand in the European community is so big that a lot of the components and parts are being taken by the European community. And third is just a geopolitical issue here in the United States and how the American behavior is relating to combustion engine vehicles.
All right. What do you account for the growth of kids' bikes from 8 million in 2019 to 16 million in 2030? Is it population growth, something else?
I just think that there's such a drive today in kids bikes, and a lot of the kids bikes, just to provide everybody a framework on this, of the total imports of bikes, roughly about of the total to even in the high time in the I think in 2019, where we were importing about 18 million bikes, 13 million of them were kids bikes. A lot of them were being sold in the mass merchants. A lot of them sold in the mass merchants. So I think that what we are seeing now is the demand for kids bikes is really big, and it's going to continue as we start fueling it with things like People for Bikes has some initiatives for getting some of the kids engaged. We're seeing a strong demand through NICA. We at Specialized are doing the Outride program, which is spurring a lot of interest. And as I said, I think parents today are much more open to kids and kids bikes and bringing kids bikes into their allowing their kids to ride them. And I think we're going to continue to see that over the course of time, and particularly through 2030.
All right. Do you see an opportunity for U.S. domestic bicycle and e-bike assembly and manufacturing over the next 5 years?
Wow, that's kind of a loaded question. I think the challenge for the U.S. manufacturing, whether it's e-bikes or whether it's traditional pedal bikes, is the manufacturing cluster, which is where all the components and parts and things are made, is all overseas and in Asia. And so we're completely dependent on Asia for the individual manufacturing, individual components. And I think that there could be, if there's some incentives here in the United States for reshoring production back to the United States, we could see some drive towards it. And I'd love nothing more than to see manufacturing and production being more local, where we can service local markets. And there's some initiatives that are underway to try and provide some tariff relief and some incentives for reshoring bicycle production here in the United States. But it's a long process. The government of the United States, we've got tariffs on bicycles that right now are anywhere from 5.5% to 11%, and the government is really conscious of the income stream from tariffs. And so if we do look to bring bicycle production back to the United States, we've got to identify ways where either we increase the jobs and we provide a high degree of revenue for the government to offset any loss in tariffs. So that's number one. And two, that we bring jobs and that they're good jobs and that they're going to last a long time. And three, that we're able to service global needs with any USA production that we have on bikes. E-bikes are another story. E-bikes, the import tariff on electric bikes is 0. That was pioneered in the early 2000s by Lee Iacocca. So in order for production to happen again in the United States, when you look at the infrastructure and the manufacturing cluster being overseas, it would be pretty difficult to be competitive importing or producing domestically here. And we're uncertain. I'm sure this subject will come up. We're uncertain what's going to happen with the Section 301 tariffs for e-bikes and for kids' bikes. They expire on December 31st, 2020. So just in about another 45 days. And that could fuel a drive to production back here in the United States. I don't really know. I don't see a lot of action in it right now, but it could. And as I said, I'd love to see manufacturing come back here to the United States.
Are the larger bike brands going to starve the smaller bike brands of component supply by leveraging their power over suppliers?
That's a good question, and I don't know the answer to that, but what I do know is that everybody's fighting, and whether it's the little brands or the big brands, everybody's out there in a dogfight trying to get components for bikes and to service the needs, and it's a competitive marketplace, and we're all respectful and of each other, and I don't see it as necessarily that we're trying to take components from any of the small makers. We're all coexisting out there. All of us are placing orders, 16, 18 months in advance, and we're all doing our best to get production and components that we need.
What do you project for the growth of indoor cycling, both in smart trainers and dedicated indoor smart cycles?
Wow, we've seen a big spike in indoor training. Of course, I was going to look and see what Peloton was training at today, but that particular marketplace seems to be servicing a lot of the I would say fitness and health oriented market. And I think it's taken its toll a lot on road bikes more than anything else. I think that traditional mountain bikes, and we've seen, entry-level bikes and kids' bikes have really not been impacted. And if you take a look at what happened when the vaccine was announced, the first thing the shares of Peloton went down somewhere in the area of about 22%. So I think that when we have a vaccine, I think people are going to come back out, and I think that we're going to start seeing people riding outdoors and using bikes outdoors, and there's going to still continue to be a need in the market for indoor cycling. I think that it will continue, particularly in areas of the world, a country where there's weather conditions, but once the pandemic's over, I think that we may see a flattening of the demand for indoor cycling and indoor cycling products that particularly focused on those people who are pretty hardcore and who really enjoy the social dimensions of indoor cycling.
Okay. Does appealing to the new majority also mean the bike business is going to have to change its white culture from the brand level down to the bike shop?
Oh, I would love to see that, and I do think that we're going to see that new diversity come into the marketplace, and I think they're gonna blend in, and I think we're going to embrace them, and I think it has to start everywhere, whether it's retail, whether it's the race side, whether it's the brand side, whether it's the manufacturing side. I think it's going to start coming in, and we're going to see it, and I think all of us will be really happy with that diversity and those people. The diversity and the different demographics is really a wonderful change and something we all should be embracing as we start seeing them now engaging.
Given the shortages, do you see growth in U.S. manufacturing? We already answered this.
Yep.
Let's see. Do you see new direct-to-consumer brands emerging? And if so, is that going to impact premium Asian production capacity?
I'm just going to give you my own opinion on the consumer direct brands. I say to people, we had specialized in, and I'm sure that a lot of people on this call, realize the blood and the sweat and the tears that we devote to making sure that, the stem length of 120 millimeters is right, and the stiffness is right, and that saddle fits perfectly for the experience. And I think that dimension is really an important part of cycling. I say to people, and some of you may have heard me say this, we're not selling the drill, we're really selling the hole. And we're not really selling the bike, we're selling the experience. And all the dimensions and all the fun things and interesting dimensions that we bring to a bike and to make it so that it really optimizes and maximizing that experience, that really needs to be delivered through a retailer. And we need to have that intermediary to be able to communicate all those innovations, and whether it's what we're doing with Athos or Stump Jumper FSR or an Enduro, that message needs to be delivered. So I'm not as bullish on a lot of the consumer direct brands, because I don't think that they deliver that experience to the degree that we devote from the product side, the performance attributes and the experience that we want to deliver. So and again, that's just my perspective. And there are brands that are selling over the internet. Many of them are really driven a lot by price, and we call them, Shimano value-added resellers. We try to distance ourselves with a lot of innovations and just making that experience wonderful for the customer, and we want to deliver that through a retailer.
Great. Do you expect that component innovation will slow down during the next 18 to 20 months in order to reduce complexity in the supply chain?
I'd like to think so, but that we're still seeing a lot of it. And I should say all of us brands, we're continuing to look at innovations to service the need. And a lot of those innovations do interesting things. They either improve the efficiency of the throughput, or they add new excitement and engagement to the customer. And I see some incremental slowdown in innovations, but I don't really see that we're gonna slow down innovations. This industry is driven by that, and it's one of the wonderful parts about it that I enjoy, and I think a lot of us enjoy, is to just have those innovations and see the needs that they service. So I'm not necessarily seeing, at least from my side, what I hear from the suppliers, we're still innovating and we're still driving on new developments, and you're seeing a lot of them, particularly in e-bikes, in some of the high valued components. So I would say minimal, that there's going to be minimal suppliers that are where we're not going to see innovations, minimal. But for the most part, I don't think you're going to see a lot of changes from brands not innovating. I think we're all going to be innovating.
Do you expect secondary component manufacturers like Microshift making gains with OE spec?
Yes, I see that, and they're learning. I think that there are plenty of opportunities for other component makers to enter the market with good products, and I think you're going to see them come into the marketplace and be competitive, particularly as we start seeing this demand grow.
Only a couple more, I swear.
Yeah.
Um, There's been concern for years that industry dollar growth has been a function of higher prices rather than more units, and that eventually bikes will simply become unaffordable for many bike buyers. How will this supply-demand situation impact bike prices in the next year? What impact might that have if demand wavers?
Well, I don't see, I don't see that as being a factor. Where I see a factor of price being something that's changing, a lot of it relates to, like, we're seeing, just as an example, ocean freight rates have increased pretty significantly within the past 3 to 4 months. We see changes in exchange rate. Today, the NT dollar is trading roughly about 6%. It's the NT is 6% stronger than the US dollar was roughly eight months ago. So prices and cost of things are really increasing, not necessarily, they're increasing because of geopolitical issues. And we're going to continue to see those over the period of time. And it's not necessarily being driven by the strong demand. It's just being driven by other forces. We are seeing shortages and increases in material cost on things like aluminum. Composite prices have gone up too. So it's not as if we want to increase the prices, and this is an opportunity. All of us, I think, are way too responsible than that, and I think that we're just reflecting changes that we see in the environment and in the geopolitical situation. So, and I think that we're going to continue to see those things. And to be honest, when you look at e-bikes and how e-bikes have impacted the marketplace, they're significantly higher retail, and they too are reflected in the overall selling prices.
All right, we got three more for you here.
Okay.
You say it will take some time for supply to catch up to demand, about 18 to 20 months, but your graph still shows supply falling short of demand through 2030. When do you
Right.
think it will catch up, if ever?
Well, so remember, these are imports, and those numbers are, let's just call them purchase as opposed to sales. So you have to reflect on sales versus purchase. And if right now, just looking out, into the future, I just see, it's going to take time, particularly to meet the global demands that we have. So you're right. I showed that I didn't see that supply was going to adequately service demand, and as I said, 18 months. If things just stay stable or decline a little bit, it might be 18 months. But if the demand remains strong, we may not see our way out of this for at least 5 years or more.
All right. Do you think we should focus more on online business?
That's everybody's has their own strategy and business on how they manage, and I don't have an opinion on that one way or the other.
All right, and this is the last one we'll take. Do you think the car industry will move heavily into the bicycle e-bike industry?
Well, what I am concerned about, to be honest, is that if we're not able to service and satisfy the demand, that we could see some new players come in, and those players could definitely scale up quickly. The automobile industry is one, motorcycle industry is another that could quickly identify the demand and enter into it. But right now, I think for most of them, I think that they're busy. I think the car business is pretty good. Most of them are now focused on electric vehicles. I think that the one thing that really does that could impact our future success is autonomous cars. That's probably the one area that could effectively slow down the growth if we do see any decline in growth. But the answer to the question is sure. I think that the automobile companies and motorcycle companies could potentially enter. They could be disruptive. They're vertical, as everybody knows. They're producing a lot of their own parts, and I think that's one of the threats that we face in this industry.
All right. So anybody that didn't get their question answered, please email us info@nbda.com, or Bob, you've put your email on the screen there. Yeah. So thank you for sticking with us for a little over an hour.
All right. I appreciate it. Thanks, everybody. I hope you have a good weekend. Everybody have a wonderful Thanksgiving.
Thanks, Bob.
All right. Bye-bye.